my trusty little sidekick Claire will let me know if I miss anything, but I can see you all, so I'll make sure that I've got the chat visibly on that screen as well, so I can see that there too. Right, so first of all, a huge thank you to everybody attending the session. So today we're going to be looking at it's about four. There are four main functions that revolve around lookup and reference functions. And I know in the session already with some of you, we've started to use phrases like VLOOKUP. So it sounds like some of you are familiar with some of these already as well. So that's great. Now, a little bit about me. So I always think it's useful just to let you know exactly who you're dealing with. I am a qualified geek now. I think I've got to the point where I can say that out loud without remorse or regret. It stems from a HND in business IT, and I've also got a Microsoft Office Master Specialist Instructor qualification. 5 years after that, spent in performance management and systems development, number crunching, all sorts of things, creating all wonderful things in Excel and Microsoft Access. And then it turned out that I quite enjoyed teaching other people how to integrate these systems. So I went down the education and training route and then spent 15 years plus in learning and development roles. And that's led me to here, where I am now today, running my own little business called Prepare to Excel. So what you can expect from the demonstrations today, some helpful hints and some tips on how to improve your knowledge and your confidence of Microsoft Excel. As I've already mentioned, the chat facility's there, but feel free to unmute yourselves as well if you wanted to. At any point during the session, just feel free to ask me a question. And if you need me to demo something again, just let me know. That's never a problem. And if I've gone too quick, or if you can't understand what I'm saying, do get excited and start to talk too fast when I'm doing Excel bits and pieces, just let me know. I've left 10 minutes at the end of the session dedicated to questions and answers. And last but not least, let's have fun. Most of you know me there today, so I do have a great sense of humour, so I'm hoping I can pass that on to you as well. The objectives for the session today, we're going to look at how we can dynamically combine data from two different tables, or if you like, we could say two different data sets, without using copy and paste. That's going to become a thing of the past in terms of connecting data together. We're going to understand the fields or the arguments associated with these lookup functions that we're going to explore today. I want us to understand the advantages of this new function. So there's a brand new function called the XLOOKUP function that exists in Excel if you've got Microsoft 365. So the XLOOKUP versus the VLOOKUP, there are disadvantages and advantages of both. And in particular, if you're familiar with HLOOKUPs, I've purposefully called them pathetic, and that is because I hate them, and we shouldn't be using them, in my opinion, and I'm going to cover why. So we will have a look at generating the VLOOKUP function, the XLOOKUP function. We'll have a look at the index and match combo as well and see what they can do in terms of using lookup and reference. I want us to understand exact matches versus approximate matches, because this is where there is so much room for pitfalls and common mistakes occurring when you're creating your functions. So finally, I love this. We are going to get our digital ducks all in a row. So first of all, I thought it might be really useful to just throw something in there about what actually are they. So what are lookup and reference functions? So lookup and reference functions help you find value in one place and bring back related information in another place. And that's the idea about those two different tables or those two different data sets talking to each other. Now, with that in mind, in Excel, so that you can force those two data sets to talk to each other, to connect to one another, we need to consider whether or not there's a relationship between two data sets. And anybody who's kind of familiar with the idea of relationships might understand the phrases like one-to-many relationships, or many-to-one, or many-to-many. You don't need to worry too much about those, but it's the same sort of approach. Without a relationship between those two data sets, we can't connect the data together for love nor money. So if there is a relationship, basically what we're talking about here is a column in one area, one data set, that perfectly matches the information in the other data set. As long as we've got that relationship, we can connect those two data sets together. So it's a little bit like a dictionary, if you like. So you've got a list of words, you've got them in one place, and you know that you need to look them up because you want to find out what their definition is. So basically, you need to look in the other data set, which is your dictionary, look in the dictionary list first. So you're looking it up, you're thinking about a lookup value. So I'm starting to use some terminology here, your lookup value. So you're looking something up in the dictionary. Then you want to return its definition. Sometimes I'll use the word, I want to pull through something from that other data set. That's the idea. We want to return something else from the other data set. So in VLOOKUP terminology, the word that you want to look up is called your lookup value. So this is terminology associated with a VLOOKUP function. So that individual word, that one word, is what you want to look up. Then you're going to go to a table array. That's your dictionary, okay? So we'll open up the dictionary. We'll start looking for that one individual word, whatever it might be. Let's pretend it's Excel. So we're looking up the word Excel in our dictionary. And then when we find the definition, please leave alone. That's what we want to pull through. And we want to pull that through so that it sits in the other data set. So that is when we start to use the phrase in VLOOKUP. And I don't like this one. This is one of its common pitfalls. This is why they created XLOOKUPs, because column index number is not what it appears to be. We think it's a column, it's not, it's a number. So I'm going to cover that for you in a second. So for example, and this is the exact scenario that we're going to start to look at with our information. In one place, we've got a data set, and let's call it student information. So in this data set, we've got the student's ID, we've got their first name, their surname, we've got an academy code, okay? We've got a code that represents an academy. We've got that student's maths results, and we've got that student's reading results. But what we actually want to know is, what's the academy name? We haven't got the academy name anywhere in this data set. However, in another data set, let's call it academy details. So now I'm over here. We've got the academy name. Sorry, we've got the academy code as well. So you see your relationship. You've got an academy code in your first data set. You've got an academy code in your second data set. You have a relationship that can make them talk to each other. And then we've got the academy name in that secondary data set, which means we want to pull through the academy name, but we want to display it in that student information data set so that it actually becomes student ID, first name, surname, academy code, exactly what we had originally. But now we are able to pull through that academy name. Still got their maths results, still got their reading results. Because we've got a relationship between the two data sets that connects them together, this means it is definitely possible. Bit of terminology again, bear with me here, and it'll all make sense as well when we start to look at it using Microsoft Excel. That academy code that you have in your first data set, that's your lookup value. Think of it as one row at a time as well. So we've got Joe Blog because it tends a certain academy code. We'll just call it B. Okay, that's our lookup value. We want to look up B in the second data set, which is our academy details. Now that's going to be called your table array. So a little bit of terminology in VLOOKUP speak, that's our table array. And it's both of those fields. It's both your academy code and your academy name. And then last but not least, the academy name that you want to pull through that's in that secondary data set is your column index number. Now, academy details only has 2 columns, which means that our column index number is the number 2. So straight away, you can see it's a little bit weird. It's a number that we add as column index number. So this is your lookup function argument. So these are the different things that your lookup function wants from you. The lookup value, and this is always, and I've put it in bold, it's 99% of the time, always a singular cell, one cell only that you want to look up. Remember that word in the dictionary. We're just looking up the word Excel. We don't care what the other words on our list are yet. We're just looking up one of them. And then we've got a table array. So your table arrays, hello relationship, it's the entire other data set. So that would be with the academy code and the associated academy name. That's the other data set. Your column index number, you're still going to go back to that secondary data set because you want to extract a column. You want to pull through the academy name from that secondary data set. Now, these 3 that we've just talked about are mandatory. You have to put something in each of those 3 fields. And I've got this as a PDF. I'm going to pop it into the chat for you in a second. So you've got these three mandatory fields that you have to tell Excel for your VLOOKUP to work. This one, you'll notice it's not in bold, and that's because Excel classes it as optional. However, I want us to be really careful with VLOOKUPs and XLOOKUPs, because my recommendation is that you treat that last one as a mandatory field, because the reason being is that most of the time, in my experience, you're looking for an exact match. And if you want an exact match, you need to put the word false or a 0 in the range lookup. If you ignore it because it's optional, it will assume you want an approximate match, which is more to do with finding tiers of numerical data, okay? Which we are going to look at in the session today as well. So I don't want it to default to approximate. Sorry, let me say that again. I don't, if I know that 99% of the time I want an exact match, I don't want it to sort of like just look like it's one I can ignore. If it looks like one I can ignore, it's actually going to go wrong 99% of the time. So I want you to sort of treat that range lookup as if it's a mandatory field. So I'm just going to come back to the chat and I'm going to add that file in there for you now while I remember. She's having a problem remembering how to do it, isn't she, Alison? Hold on. It's a little plus sign and it should come up and let me add like a document, but it's not. I'll come back to that. I'll come back to that. Right. I'm going to launch Excel. So this is a file that we're going to work with today. Here's our list of students. And obviously there's a little bit more going on than there was in my original scenario. I'm even missing their student name. I haven't got that. I've got a student ID though. I've got that academy code that I talked about. I'm missing an academy name. And I've got some various other bits and pieces lending themselves to additional needs and kind of attendance, gender information. I've got a reading score that's already been brought through into here, but I don't know what that means in terms of, is it like an A, B, C or D, or is it credit, merit, distinction? So I don't know the exact reading results, and I don't know whether or not intervention is required as a result of that reading score. So these are all things, these 4 columns that we're going to build into the session today. So the first one I'm going to start with is the academy name. But before we even feel ready to create a VLOOKUP, I want to talk about making your data VLOOKUP worthy. I use this phrase a lot. Is your information, is it worthy yet? Are we ready? Is it good to go? Because the answer's no. Now then, this data set that we've got here looks fine and dandy, structured beautifully, looks like a table, smells like a table, but it is not a table, okay? Because for this to be a table, when I click in it, I should see a certain phrase up here at the top right-hand corner that says table design, and that is not there, not there. So I want to make sure that I'm going to convert this data set into a table first. And I do that, I love to click on a field heading. I've got no empty columns, no empty rows, so it's beautifully presented so far. And I'm just going to click Format as Table, and I'm just going to choose one of these options off the list. I get a little message that comes up and says, this is the data set we think that you want. My dancing answer running around a set of cells that look spot on. And yes, my table has headers, which is those field headers in row 2. So I am able to click OK to this. And now I've got what I was hoping to see, which is my table design tab. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with converting information to a table, if you take anything away from the session today, let it be this. They are absolute gold. Converting your underlying data sets to a table is massive best practice. It unlocks a whole host of other things that you can do with it that I don't have time to talk to you about right now, but I promise you, massive, massive advocate for tables. Lots of you probably already know this. We should be converting all of our underlying data sets into tables. Once you've converted to a table and you've got that table design tab, make sure you rename it as well. So I've zoomed over to the left-hand side here, and I'm going to go TBL, and I'm going to call this one results, because it's not necessarily students, it's more about the results for each student. So TBL results. I love a little naming convention. TBL, in all of my years of working with Excel, has never caused me any problems whatsoever. I'm loving the honesty. This is great stuff because it is fabulous. And what it also does, Pam, because I know that you're an Excel geek, because Claire pre-warned me, is it means you don't have to think too much about absolute cell referencing and all of that jazz as well, which is fabulous for VLOOKUPs and XLOOKUPs and all of that too. So we've converted to a table and we've given it a name. So we've called it TBL results. Doesn't like spaces. It's all good. It was all good stuff, Pam. Now, where is my secondary data set? Where's my dictionary? Okay, so I haven't yet looked and told you where that other set of information is. At the minute, all I've got is academy codes. Well, that's no use to me if I don't actually know what a corresponding academy name for code G, it's not G, it's J, for my first row actually is. So I've called it dictionary. I've created a worksheet, and this worksheet is my dictionary. I do like to call them data source sometimes as well, because I feel like that's what they kind of are. So I always have a separate worksheet, call it data source or call it dictionary, what you will. And here you can see I've got all of the corresponding information for each of my academy codes. Guess what I'm going to do with this information as well? So I'm going to convert this into a table. And I am also going to rename this one, and I'm going to call it TBL Academy. There we go, job's done. So that's all sorted. I am VLOOKUP ready. So I'll go back to E3 for the academy name. And by the way, I am going to send you this data set so you can have a play with it. But if I send you it now, it will run into all sorts of problems while I'm demoing. So I'm going to send you it after the session. Now, in academy name, I can go ahead and start to build in my VLOOKUP. I prefer a dialog box. You can type them from scratch if you're familiar enough with them, and it does give you those 4 arguments that we've talked about already. However, when you're learning one of these functions from, like, you know, if you've not used it very much, if you're not particularly familiar. I thought somebody tried to say, did somebody have a question? Is everything okay? Oh, I've put VLOOKUP. There isn't a VLOOKUP, it's a VLOOKUP. So you can search for your VLOOKUP. It'll appear in your list of functions, and that's why. I just feel like it breaks down those fields much easier visually, especially as you're learning how to use them. And what I've done is I've used my dialog box like a ruler, because it's only row 3 that I care about right now. Only row 3 that I care about. So our first argument, and I'm going to take this a little bit slower than I have been doing so far. My lookup value is one singular cell reference, just one singular cell reference. And remember, it's that idea that you've got a list of things that you want to look up, but we're just focusing on row 3. And it's not the student ID that connects these 2 data sets. Remember that relationship between the 2 different data sets? It's the academy code that connects them, because it's that lives here and it lives in the other one as well. That bit's really important, is figuring out what connects them, what's the relationship. So the relationship is the academy code lives here and it lives in the other data set as well. Now then, here we go, the table array. So the table array, remember we talked about we've got a list of words. Now we need to go to the dictionary. So now we're going to immediately go to our dictionary worksheet. And notice it says table array. Now that is exactly what it says on the tin. It's the whole thing. Now watch this. If you're not familiar with tables, you're going to wet yourself. It's amazing. Hover your mouse just in the corner of the table. Let me see if it won't let me zoom in because I'm mid-function. So I'm going to hover my mouse just in the corner of the table, because normally with information, we feel like we've got to click and drag the whole lot. You could click and drag the whole lot, but because you've converted to a table, if you hover your mouse and it becomes a black diagonal pointing arrow, diagonal's the important bit here, click once, it'll highlight the whole thing, because it's got to be the entire table. Now, before I move into column index number, let's talk about what we've got here, because if I count A, I've got 1 column. If I count B, I've got column number 2. If I count column C, I've got column number 3. However, my question is to you, does TBL Academy include A? Use the chat facility. Oh, I clicked then. That was very aggressive. Use the chat facility. Does our TBL Academy include column A?
No.
No, so we don't count it. We absolutely ignore it because we've got something in column B, that's 1, and something in column C, that's 2. So what we want to pull through, and I'm now going to click on it, you'll see why I didn't click on it straight away. When you go to that next field, it takes you back to your original data set. And I find that really annoying because I now can't see my TBL Academy. I know I need column index number 2. I know it's a 2 that I need to add here. But what I tend to say to people is, don't be afraid to pop back in. Don't be afraid to pop back into that dictionary worksheet so you can see the wood and the trees, right? So I can see the Academy code. I can see the Academy name. I now know it's definitely column index number 2 that I want. Be careful though, because Excel loves to listen to every click you make. So here, just delete what it started to listen and put the number 2 in. And remember what I said about range lookup. So range lookup is the one that's optional, but in actual fact, we definitely want an exact match. So when we talk, so we need to put in the word false, but we can also use a 0. I love 0 because it links really nicely to XLOOKUP. So you can use a 0, works the same for XLOOKUP. So it's a nice transferable little skill that you get in there. So if I pop back into Excel and finish this bit off, I was trying to point out the idea that we want an exact match. Approximate matches tend to learn, well, they only do now I think about it, I've said the words out loud. Approximate matches are numerical. And we're going to look at that with the reading score that we've got to do further on. But for this one, we definitely want an exact J, find an exact I, find an exact B, match it word for word, letter for letter. So that's what your exact match is. So I'll click OK to that. Another lovely little tip, because we've converted to a table, we get automatic autofill. Oh, why do you start the table in B2 instead? So I can prove to you that we don't count A. But basically, Pam, the whole reason that I do it this way is so that I can explain why we're counting 1 and count. But yes, you can absolutely start in A1 or A10 or wherever. You definitely can. But you'll find sometimes with your dictionary information, because you'll end up with various dictionaries in one place, they're all over the place. So they don't always start in the same. And I wouldn't create a dictionary for each one. I definitely wouldn't create a dictionary for each backbone of your lookups. So yeah, it's so that I can explain how to count them and why we ignore A more predominantly than anything else. So yeah, we got automatic autofill because we've converted to a table. I'm not gonna bypass these not applicables. I think that's really important that I did this on purpose. Didn't know you have, yeah, definitely have multiple sources on one page, especially if you're gonna convert them into a table, Pam. So I've got some not applicables. What do we think these not applicables might mean? Anyone come across not applicables when you've been using before? No, can't find the data. Spot on, Claire. So this not applicable, well, it's not a message, it's an error message, is always associated with lookups. If you see this not applicable sign, it's Excel's way of going, I bet you this is a lookup and I bet you I can't find what I'm looking for. So Z does not exist. Z does not exist. So if we go back to the dictionary, there's no Z here, no Z to speak of anywhere. And that's really important because you shouldn't, don't take that not applicable sign lightly. That's a sign of a huge error in your underlying information. It either means that there should be a Z in my dictionary, or it means that this shouldn't allow people to enter a Z. It's one of two things. So for me, data validation, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar. It's okay, Pam. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with data validation, but data validation should live here in column D for the Academy code so that your lookup value can never be wrong. They are hand in hand. Data validation here so that this lookup value can never ever go wrong. control what they're allowed to enter so that your lookup value always works. Right, conscious of time, but really doing quite well here. I'm going to go on to the student name. Now, in my student name, I've got them here, but I've purposefully done it this way around so that I can also show you something that VLOOKUPs hate. It is the same as a drop-down list. Yes, it absolutely is. Here, I've got the student ID, but it's not at the left. Now, this is one of the pitfalls of VLOOKUPs. When you're thinking about using a VLOOKUP, you need your relationship data to be the leftmost column. It needs to be in the leftmost column, okay? So where I've got student ID here, VLOOKUP is not going to work. Doesn't matter where it is in this one. It doesn't matter at all where it is in this one, because you can see that this worked and it was looking to the left. That's fine. This will work as a VLOOKUP because it's looking up the student ID. It doesn't care where the lookup value is. What it does care about is in your table array that the connecting, the relationship column should be first. So we're going to have to move this. So I'm going to convert this to a table. And I'm going to rename the table TBL students. Makes sense to me. And then I'm going to show you a lovely little way to move this information. Now, I'm going to click once here to highlight the data, but I'm going to click again so that I also get the field heading. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click it and drop it. This only works because it's a table. So I'm going to do this one more time because it's probably quite new for you. Click once just above the student ID field, and I'm just getting the information underneath, just the data, the records. If I click again, I get the field heading as well. And then what I'm going to do is just treat it like a rectangle of information. And I'm going to click it once, and you can just see where it's going to drop it. Obviously, it does weird things over here, which we're familiar with when we're clicking and dragging and dropping. But because it's a table, I'm going to just drop it in that space there, and it'll swap those two over. It'll transpose them. Now then, that's all great. That's good to go. So then back to doing my VLOOKUP for student names. I'm going to do a few VLOOKUPs, and then I'm going to start to look at the X's. So with this one, my lookup value is the student ID just for this particular row. Table array, going to go to my second data set, my dictionary. So I'll go over here and I'm going to use that little diagonal pointing arrow. I'll tell you what, the other thing, Pam, it makes it really easy to, I mean everybody, but it was just because Pam asked the question, it makes it much easier to get that little diagonal arrow if A is spare. I always leave A spare because it makes it much easier for that little diagonal arrow to appear if it's not near my row numbers. So I'll click once here now, and then we definitely want column index number 2 again. So this one's lovely and straightforward, very, very similar to the scenario with the academies. Range lookup, don't overlook it, okay? So my range lookup is an exact match again, because even though these are numerical, I still want an exact match. So I'm going to click OK. I'll get automatic fill all the way down. I can just drop in to check and see if I've got any not applicables, which will always be at the bottom of a filter list, by the way. It won't put them in alphabetical order, it'll put them at the bottom. There aren't any to speak of, so that's all great. So that's a couple of VLOOKUPs done. I'm going to stay with VLOOKUPs just to avoid too much confusion initially. And now what I'm going to look at is reading results. So this is where there is a reading score for, what was this person's name? Bradford. For Bradford, he's got a reading score of 59. So I want to know what kind of result that equates to and whether or not there's any intervention required. So let's focus on that reading result first. So back to my dictionary, I've created another set of information. It's further up, and I'm going to focus on this one here first. Right. So here, and it's in red on purpose, I'm getting to it. I've got my reading scores. I've got what I like to call parameters governing all of my reading scores. So basically from 0 to 49, they would get a fail. From 50 to 69, a credit. From 70 to 89, it's a merit. And anything above 90 is a distinction. So it's a little bit like a complicated if statement. And in fact, actually, that's where XLOOKUPs and VLOOKUPs come in really handy. They're complicated if statements. So here I've got my information ready to go, but I've got parameters. So I'm not looking for exact matches. This is where I'm looking for approximate matches. VLOOKUPs versus HLOOKUPs. So here's a HLOOKUP. So with our VLOOKUP, information that we want to look up in our dictionary is vertical, okay? Here, our information is horizontal. Now, it's really difficult to explain, but I would avoid them like the plague. These don't work well. And to be honest with you, 99% of the time, we don't choose to display our information like this naturally. We would choose this kind of methodology to display information. If for whatever reason you have got information that looks like this, you can use a transpose function to basically force it to return into a vertical fashion. So you can use that to do that. Your transpose function is an element of 365. So don't go looking for it if you've not got 365. And that transpose function is linked. So if I were to delete that information there, I'm also going to ruin what I've created here. So I would recommend that we would copy this, paste it as values. Sorry, I did that really quickly. Let me do that again. Copy it and then choose paste as values from here. I always go for that one, but I think any of those would work. And that takes away the idea that it's linked to, it's not a function anymore. It's actually just words, so they're much easier. And then we can delete that with ease. But that was just me showing you the transpose function very quickly. I'm still going to go ahead and use a VLOOKUP for this information here, and I am going to leave it as it's currently displayed, but it's still wrong. You can also copy and paste. Yes, you absolutely can, Charlotte. Brilliant, you can. Yeah, but I just think a transpose function's really fancy, isn't it? Anyway, is this converted to a table already? Yes, it absolutely is, and it is called TBL Maths. So the reading results for Bradford. Let's start in K3, and I'm going to go ahead and ask for a VLOOKUP. With a VLOOKUP, we want to look up Bradford's individual reading score. We know this bit, we know that we're then going to go to our dictionary for our table array. And I'm going to make the diagonal arrow. I'm going to click when it's a diagonal arrow. It's still column index number 2. We haven't just started to look further than that yet. And I could put a 1 to represent an approximate match, but the truth of the matter is that if I ignore it, it will be approximate. But like I said in my initial thoughts, treat it like it's mandatory because it's good practice when you start to move to XLOOKUPs because they've switched it around. So this one is good to go, and I'll click OK, and you'll see it start to fail. So you know that it's failed when you get a lot of applicables, especially with an approximate match. It should be able to find these numbers. The problem that you've got with an approximate match, does anybody know what the problem is? Has anybody used approximate matches with VLOOKUPs before? Not too sure. Okay, nope. That's fine. See how it's in a certain order. So at the minute, this is in largest to smallest. Now, for this to work correctly, it needs to be smallest to largest. It's essential that you have this, and it's an A to Z. So your smallest to largest is an A to Z order. It doesn't matter for an exact match because Excel's going to look for an exact phrase or an exact number of exact certain characters. With an approximate match, it has to be smallest to largest. And this is true with an XLOOKUP as well. So there was actually nothing wrong with my VLOOKUP. It was this underlying information. My dictionary wasn't laid out correctly, wasn't in the right order. And if I go back to results now, they're all smashing. So nothing needed to be changed at a VLOOKUP level. Although, if you can imagine you were doing this for the first time, you'd probably think, well, what have I done? What have I done? I don't know what I've done wrong and I'm getting not applicables. It's all to do with that ascending order for an approximate match. Now, intervention required just explores that idea that sometimes our dictionaries, sorry, I'm trying to get that, I was trying to get it centered, but it's not playing nicely. Intervention required is all the way over here. reading score is all the way over here. So for some of these, there's a reading score intervention required. So for the first kind of 4 levels, so this differs slightly, and I've still got the reading results. So I could have used this one for the reading results. If you imagine what we did here, that information that we've got here is exactly the same here. You've got credits, you've got distinctions. And I've got intervention required, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 columns. So you've probably guessed what I'm about to do with intervention required. I'm going to build in my VLOOKUP. I am running out of time. And what I'm going to do is I want to look up the reading score, because remember, that's still what connects them. It's the first column in my dictionary as well. So look up the reading score for Bradford. One singular cell is always your lookup value. Your table array, you've got it over here, and it is column index number 6. So you've got to be a little bit careful when you've got different things going on. When you've got lots of columns, you can kind of just use that one dictionary for that information, as long as you're aware that column index number 6 is the one that you want to pull through. Now, where this fails is someone somewhere will go, actually, I'm just going to insert a column here. You know, another Tom, Dick and Harry that's using your information, and they might put something in here that goes, teacher. So they might pop like another teacher name in to be able to, maybe it's been turned into sets of groups of children at different levels, and they might have Mrs. Smith here, Mrs. Jones here, Mrs. Green, and so on and so forth. What that's going to do is spoil this. And that's one of the pitfalls of your VLOOKUPs, okay, is that that number now has become this column. That's why they created XLOOKUPs. I do have some boring trivia about it as well, about how Excel only created VLOOKUPs to mirror what Lotus 123 was doing in the 80s. That's the only reason they created it. It was always meant to look like an XLOOKUP. So with that in mind, I'm going to explore that with you now. So XLOOKUPs are slightly different, and they have a lot more arguments associated with them. So I've got my trusty PowerPoint going on here. The one that I wanted to show you was this one. And again, I'm going to make sure that you've got this. You'll notice that the lookup value hasn't changed. That's still one singular cell reference. But instead of table array, we've got lookup array. Okay, and again, that's from our dictionary. So that's from the secondary data set. With regards to return array, that's still which column we want to extract, which column we want to pull through. But these two work slightly differently. Your match mode has got a lot more going on. You've still got exact, which is still represented by a 0. And then it's this one that is most likely to use that represents an approximate match. And it's exactly the same approach as what we've just done. If something is in A to Z order with your parameters, it's a -1 that you want to use. This one tends to get used with Z to A, and this one's for fuzzy matches with wildcards. That's a story for another day though. Search mode, I'm not going to get into that as well, because 9 times out of 10 you won't need to worry about it. And then we've got this absolute beaut built into an XLOOKUP function that lets you choose what kind of message you want to display if it finds an error. So let's explore this with our lovely first student. So I am going to start my XLOOKUP. There's all of my lovely arguments. I'm going to use this dialog box like a ruler. So it's only Bradford I'm concerning myself with. Lookup value, nothing's changed here. We still want to look up the academy code. One singular cell, still the same. Lookup array though, this is last time where we chose an entire table. With an XLOOKUP, you don't do that. You still go to your dictionary file though, but instead of choosing the entire table, you just tell Excel where it's likely to find the relationship. So I'm going to hover just above the word academy code, Click once, it's highlighted the entire column, okay? I don't go high, I don't go to my letters at all anymore. I just go just above my field heading. Then, if you can imagine, the return array wants to know, well, what am I pulling through? Well, I know that I want it to pull through this particular column. So when you are asking for return array, it's that column. That's, remember when we talked about a dictionary idea, that's, I'm pulling through the definition. So this is one cell, your lookup value is one cell. Your lookup value is going to your secondary data set and telling it where will I find that? Hypothetically, where am I likely to find that? If not found, brilliant, no academy. So you can be really specific in this. Academy. And then your match mode, if you remember, for an exact match, you could leave it empty, but I recommend, again, with the match mode, it's exactly the same as, I've got them open here, exactly the same as range lookup. Don't treat it like it's optional, because with your, sorry, I do have the X lookup one here, but I've got a dialog box in the way for Teams. The match mode, treat that like it's mandatory and put the 0 in to force it to understand it's an exact match that I'm after. Okay, now I'm going to come back to you all. There's no academy look. And what I'd do with this is I'd use conditional formatting and make that red, because then it's alerting you to the idea that actually this is an error, this is a problem, but I'm not seeing this ridiculous not applicable sign anymore. I'm seeing the phrase no academy. Right, I'm just going to come back to chat and make sure everybody's okay. Right, does that make sense? I think I'm going to move on to index and match, because your X lookup for this kind of thing is exactly the same. There's very, very little difference. It's just, what would you prefer that I did? I'm just going to come back to the group and ask if you would like me to cover an approximate match with an X lookup, even if it means we can't cover index and match in detail. Maybe I need to do index and match as a completely different session.
What do you think's most useful, Alison?
X lookup all day long. I am of the opinion that whilst index and match are useful, the second you learn how to do an X lookup effectively, you'll never use index and match again for the rest of your life. It's too good. X lookup is too good.
For you, not for me.
Shall I go? Who's that? Shall I go through that again? Was that you, Barbara?
It was.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Not the not exact one will be useful for us. XLOOKUP. XLOOKUP's a fantastic tool. I'm so glad that they built that in. So I am just going to go through this one, an XLOOKUP, and we'll do both of these. Right, reading results for Bradford. So let's build in this XLOOKUP idea. Dialog box like a ruler. Lookup value, one singular cell. Only ever one singular cell. It's only when you want to get complicated that you start to use multiple cells. You'll make a rod for your own back. It's awful. It does work in places, but not at this level yet. Then you look up array. Remember, you've just said to Excel, I want you to look up a reading score. So now you need to kind of go, here's all the possible reading scores. All right. So you look up array, we'll go to our dictionary, and actually I'll use this scenario. And it's these. Here's all my different tiers of reading scores. So I'd highlight just that one column, one single click, not the two like I did before to move an entire column. Just one click just above the field heading. Because VLOOKUPs and XLOOKUPs don't care about your field headings. They're not interested in field headings at all. I meant to mention that earlier, but I forgot. Then my return array. Now, when we did this with a VLOOKUP, we used the number 6. Can you remember using the number 6? With this, because of the way the X lookups work, I'm going to go back to my dictionary and I'm going to say, there is intervention required. That's the column that I want to pull through. I'm not doing that one. I'm doing a different one. I'm doing reading results. There, I'm doing that one. This is the column, the reading result. This is the one that I want to pull through. So I single clicked just above the phrase reading result. And remember, that single click idea only works because we've converted our data set to a table. If not found, now there shouldn't be an issue with numerical information, but let's pop this in there anyway. No result We'll just pop that in there. And match mode. So our match mode for this one is -1. The reason your match mode is -1, and it's all for you in this lovely thing here, next smallest. This one's really highly likely if you've put your numerical information in an A to Z format, in a smallest to largest format. So that will work brilliantly. We do have that search mode one underneath, but we're ignoring it. It's optional. We're not going to need it at this level. So there we go. That's brilliant. And the reason that's working is because that's in an A to Z order. That's been sorted smallest to largest. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like with intervention required and build in a XLOOKUP here. Now then, this is the important bit, because you've kind of like moved on and you'll be thinking, do I need to look up the reading results? No, that's not what connects your information. That's not the relationship. It's in both, but I'd still go with the reading score. I'd still go with the reading score here. And then my lookup array, I'm going to go to my dictionary. So I'm opening up my other data set and I'm choosing reading score from here. So your lookup value is 1 reading score. Your lookup array is all the possible reading scores. And then your return array for this one, it's going to be intervention required. But when you click on it, it takes you back to that first data set. It's quite annoying the way that it does that. I wish it didn't. And then we can highlight whether or not intervention is required. If not found, no result, because it's a result that's missing. So we would put no result. And match mode is -1, because we know that our reading scores are in A to Z order. Then we've got intervention required. Now, the brilliant thing about this is if I insert a new column like I did last time, and I'll just put test and we'll just put A, B, C, D, E, and so on and so forth. I'm making it up as I go along. Nothing happens to my XLOOKUP. It is fine and dandy. It's absolutely fine. It's not affected by new columns that are inserted, because if you look at the way your structured named references, I'm just moving my Teams thing out of the way, bear with me. If you look at the way that it's structured, it's continuously looking at the phrase, at the column, intervention required. So it doesn't matter if new columns are inserted. So this is why it supersedes your VLOOKUP. That and the fact that you get a built-in error message. So I've got a little bit of an outro for the PowerPoint, and I've got some time to go over any questions that anybody's got. I didn't cover this little slide that I had planned here. There is a function in Excel called lookup. I love that you're already thinking, where can I use it? That's excellent, brilliant stuff. The lookup function is just a legacy function, which basically means that it's still in there because it might be being used in old Excel spreadsheets. It's very boring and it's not particularly clever because it can only cope with two columns of information or 2 rows of information if it's a H approach. And then you've got your VLOOKUPs that we've looked at today. We've got H lookups, which we despise. There's a match function. Now, what your match function does is it'll sort of say to you, look for Apple, and it'll say, oh, I found it. It's the 3rd one in the list. That's what your match function does. Your index function is basically going to use that match function to be able to go, look for the 3rd item in the list. What does it say? So they are a combo in their own right. But your match and your index function for me aren't as clever or as easy to use as an XLOOKUP. So I would use an XLOOKUP before. Yes, you can, absolutely. I tend to email everything out after the session. And then I've popped in here XLOOKUPs, in my opinion, the god of lookups. I will send you all of these various different things through. I don't go through my full PowerPoint during the webinar because I build it ready for the more in-depth 3-hour session. The only bit that I kind of wanted to mention was that if you wanted to use me for any additional training in the future, this is my little shameless pitch slide. I'm more than happy to work with everybody on Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook. I even dabble a little bit in Access. I'm not ready for Power BI yet. Or if you just wanted an expert on speed dial, feel free to make use of me at a project perspective. I can kind of like have an expert pair of eyes on anything that you're doing and just give you advice about that's how I would approach this. This is what you probably need to use there. And similarly, from a consultancy perspective, just feel free to kind of like let me know if you need any help with anything. I've popped some contact details on the screen here, and that QR code will take you directly to my LinkedIn. I am more than happy to connect with anybody if you want to do that. And that's really it from me. Apart from, I would love it if you could do my evaluation. It always does that on the last one. I don't press the button, but it goes on to the end. I have an evaluation form that I'm going to send out to everybody. One of the things that I do try and do with my free webinars is generate a little bit of a feedback thing that I can pop on my LinkedIn site to just sort of let people know how it went. And obviously I can't do that without you letting me know how it went. So what I'll do is I'll pop actually this website link straight into our chat now. And I'll send you through the PowerPoint and the Excel file at the end of the session today. Has anybody got any questions?
No, all made perfect sense to me.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm really glad. The dictionary idea, can I just ask your opinion? Did that work well? The idea that like you're looking up a word and then you've got a dictionary?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's more simple, like layman's terms.
It's the first time I've used that analogy, and I'm not gonna lie, Chat GPT told me, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah. I like the idea of calling it a source as well. I've never thought of it as your source of information, which is silly really, because it is your source when you think about it. But yeah, the dictionary worked well, I thought.
But I'm really glad that you enjoyed tables.
Do you know what? You've literally taught me so much in that hour. I could sit and listen to you for hours. It takes a lot for me to take things in this way, because I'm more of a doer. I like to get in there and do something and learn. But the way you've taught it's been fantastic. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Pam, thank you. You've made my day.
Well, I only speak the truth, Gary. I'll tell you that. Probably too much sometimes.
No.
Brilliant. So I tend to hang around for about 5-10 minutes afterwards, but I completely understand. I've finished my session. So if you wanted to leave, that's fine as well. But I'll hang on if anybody had any further questions or wanted to ask anything privately. I'm here.
Just a quick question, like if we needed help, so we're doing some speeding reports at the moment, and those Lookups I think would be really handy in an element of our speeding reports. If we wanted advice on that, I'm presuming you charge for the one-to-one advice.
Yeah. Do you want me to put you across some costings so that you've got an idea?
If you could, that would be lovely. Yes, please.
Of course I will. Yeah, no problem at all, Pam. I've got your email address, I think, or I can pass it on through Claire.
Whichever's easiest. It's just more so for me really, because I don't think the company, I don't know whether the company would pay, but I'm intrigued as to how I learn more about Excel and how it could benefit me in the future really.
Yeah, I'll get your email address. I don't want to give too many of my own gurus away, but the people that I use. But yeah. I'll make sure that we have a bit of a chat, because I was just explaining to Claire that with you all being local, Enterprise Made Simple have got some funding at the moment, so it could be that as a team, if you wanted to take advantage of that funding, there's a strong chance that I can organise something, because I work freelance with them. I'm a business kind of independently in my own right, but I'm working really closely with EMS at the moment, and I know that they've got a little funding pot that they want to get rid of.
Right. But
so
to be honest with you,
able to take a case forward to say, right, I'm going to build A, B and C in, because that's what's going to benefit 13.
Yeah.
And maybe we can have a look at doing it that way.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think it's a one for the big wigs in our company more than anything, because there's a lot of people within our and not just our directorate, but throughout 13 that are not au fait with spreadsheets, and it can be quite frustrating when we're sending out data and they don't understand how to read it. So I don't know. I think if Gary can take that up to the powers that be, I think it could be something that we could all really benefit from, especially the way you teach as well. It's not just about what you're teaching, it's how you're teaching it.
Well, I do know, while I've got your attention, then there's a couple of dates for your diary. Have I stopped sharing? Because I'm just going to open
Yes.
my
Yeah,
emails.
you've stopped, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. I do know that I've got a couple of dates lined up that are fully funded in October. If they would be of any use to you, I can let you know what they are. So, October, intermediate Excel. So there's an intermediate Excel session in Middlesbrough on the 20th of October, which is fully funded. That's with EMS. So that's
Ooh.
me delivering that on their behalf. And then the other one that I'm massive on, I'm absolutely obsessed with pivot tables and data dashboards.
I didn't
And
know how
that
to use them until Gary taught me, and now I'm obsessed with them. But I'd love to know
Gary
more
doesn't
about them.
know.
Gary only
On the
knows a
10th,
small amount.
I'm an absolute whiz kid on pivot tables and data dashboards. They are my speciality. I adore them. And I'm teaching that full day session on Monday, the 10th of November. And again,
Ooh.
that's with EMS, so that's fully funded. And I'm desperate to get people on it because they'll let me deliver it anyway. I delivered with 6 last month, but I'd love to see like more people in the
Yeah.
room.
Well, I'm going to do something that you always got told not to do when you were a kid, you know, like when you asked your friend to sleep over in front of your mum. But Gary, am I right to do those?
I'll have to check and see who's in
Yeah.
and what's going on. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm open to. We've been looking for training for like quite a while, and there's always sort of something that sort of doesn't work out.